right. Looks like we have someone that's joined us virtually too, so that's great. Fix my screen. There we go. Great. All right, so I'm Amy Birch. I'm a traffic engineer and consultant that does work with NDOT to help facilitate the traffic calming program. And so we're glad that you're all able to be here and learn about traffic calming projects from Albion 33rd and 32nd. We record these meetings, so you heard that maybe on my laptop. We record these, so we post them on our website or NDOT's website, so that if your neighbors that missed this meeting, they can, or come on in, they can, yeah, watch the record. They can go check out the meeting online and get the same information and be educated about the project as well. So let's get started. Is working? There we go. All right, so a little bit of background. Traffic calming. These are, we call it the Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program, and it focuses on residential streets like your streets. And it's physical solutions to encourage drivers to slow down and drive an appropriate speed on residential streets. So we're really targeting speed reduction with this program. We often talk about the 3 E's of traffic calming, being education, enforcement, and engineering. Education, we do part of that for these meetings, reaching out to the community, educating people how to drive through through traffic calming devices and such. Enforcement, that's the job that the police department does. They are partners in this program with NDOT, but we all know that the police department cannot be on all the residential streets all across the city, all hours of the day. So that's where engineering comes in, and that's what NDOT focuses on. The engineering of the street, how we modify the street, install things on the street to get slower speeds. And why do we do this? There's a really close correlation between safety and speed, vehicle speed. So this infographic is showing pedestrians' likelihood of survival if hit by a vehicle at various speeds. So on the left, at 25 miles per hour, a pedestrian, if they're struck by a vehicle, they have an 89% chance of survival. If that speed goes up to 35 miles per hour, it goes down, the likelihood of survival goes down to 68%. And 45 miles per hour, that chance of survival goes down to 35%. And NDOT and the city has a commitment to Vision Zero. We're trying to achieve 0 deaths on the roadway. Incapacitating injuries as well. So that's why we're targeting these speeds on residential streets to get speeds down to what the speed limit is, typically 55 miles per hour. So it's very easy to see that severity is higher at higher speeds, but also a chance to avoid a crash altogether increases as speed goes down. So if you're driving slower, you have a longer time to react to something that enters the roadway, a child, dog, whatever, another car, another vehicle. So you have a longer time to slow down and avoid a crash altogether. Targeting those slow speeds. So this is, as Councilmember mentioned, a application program. So neighbors get together and apply for traffic calming on their street. We have a very high demand for traffic calming. As of our last selection in March this year, we had over 600 residential streets that had for traffic calming. And based on budget and the way the program is run, we were able to select 25 neighborhood streets for traffic calming. This map is a snapshot from our online live tracker. It's kind of color coded to show you where streets are in the program and they've applied for the program, or if they've been selected or in this design phase, or if it's been installed already. So outside the traffic calming program, you may have other service needs from the city and the city's departments. We always like to plug the hub. If you're not familiar with it, it's an excellent tool to reach the right department for needs that you have, your traffic that get picked up, or the street lights out, signs been knocked down. You can report those to the hub, and it gets to the right part of the right person to get you an answer. I used it this weekend. But back to traffic calming. So I told you we had over 600 streets that applied for traffic calming. And how do we select 25 streets out of those? It's a data-driven process, and we select those that score highest in this prioritization. So we look at the number of different criteria points, mainly speed. So we go out and we measure the speed on all the streets that have asked for apply for traffic calming. And that goes into this calculation. Essentially, we're the whole thing is 100 points. So 45% of the score is the speed. Then we also look at volume. We also look at trip destination. So is your street close to schools, libraries, parks, places where we would expect people to walk from your neighborhood street? You guys have lots of that around this neighborhood. So that trip destinations were 5% of the score. We look at non-driver accommodations as well, just 15% of the score. So that's, is your street with sidewalks? Are there bike lanes in the street, transit stops? Those type of things where we would have people using the street as more pedestrian. And then we also look back at 10 years worth of data. We call this the vulnerable user injury and fatality rate. So we look at whether there's been a pedestrian, bicycle injury or fatality on that street in the last 10 years. So that's where 10% score. So for these 3 streets, I'm showing a map here and highlighted in the greenish color, the streets in the limits of our project. This is a snapshot taken from our online tracker map. And so you'll see 31st has also applied. It's pink. It's got an application on file, but it hasn't been selected yet. The 3 streets, Albion, 33rd, and 32nd, we've highlighted those green. We're in the meeting and design phase for these 3 projects. And then a couple streets over here to the left have been selected and had some traffic calming measures installed already. So essentially, we're Albion between 28th and Claire, and then 33rd and 32nd between Albion and Clifton. So I do want to give you some data points of what we've measured on your streets. I just put it in a grid here. On the left side are our kind of metrics we look at for your street. And then Albion is the second column, 32nd and 33rd. So the 85th percentile speed that we measured on Albion Street was 42 miles per hour. I do want to explain what the 85th percentile speed is. It is a metric that traffic engineers we often refer to. It just gives us a good idea of how fast the people are driving on the street. But what it means is 85% of the traffic is going that speed or below. And on the flip side, it means that 15% of the traffic over the course of the day is actually going above that number. So 15% of the traffic is going even higher than 42. And the speed limit on these streets is 20 miles per hour. So that's pretty high. Really weighed into how Albion was selected for this program. All 3 of these streets are local streets and residential streets, so they're not meant to carry a lot of traffic. And then there's various degrees of sidewalk, but Albion is missing sidewalk, mostly on the north side. It does have sidewalk on the south side. And then 32nd, 33rd also got sidewalk on most of the street. We do have some on-street parking that's on those streets as well. And you know that there's some vertical grade on these streets. Let me talk about our toolkit after I give you some data points there. Speed cushions is the tool that NDOT uses the most for this program. They're effective. People generally really like them, and they're easy to implement. So what these are the vertical devices. They are modular and drill them into the pavement, and they're kind of like humps, but we call them speed cushions because they have these gaps between that allow the emergency vehicles to straddle them. and not be as, impacted by having to slow down. The emergency vehicles, however. But passenger vehicles, their wheelbase is more narrow, so they, still are impacted and have to slow down and navigate over these. So the speed cushions, they come in various, lengths. We typically, in urban neighborhoods like these, we do them in the 10.5 foot long, lengths. And that's the length as you drive over, across the cushion. They'll come with the markings that you see that you can see at night, so they're visible. We also include warning signage, like you see in this picture here. And then depending on the width of the street, characteristics of the street, we can configure them in a number of different arrangements and pavement markings so that it fits within the road and we have the right markings. So if we have center line, we can install center line on it. So when we put these, we typically will pay attention to many things. But, street intersections, we don't put them in the middle of an intersection. We don't put them at in front of your driveway or right by your driveway so that you're not having to drive sideways over them to get in and out of the driveway. We also are trying to put them in a series if we can to get a consistent speed by drivers along the length of the street. So those are some factors that we're really looking at. And then grade does come into play. We can't put them on grades steeper than 8%. So you have to look at that when we're locating where to put speed cushions. But again, they're very effective and we use them quite a bit in the program where they're speed tables are made of a similar device. They're rubberized and they're modular, but they fit the whole width of the street, and then they're flat on top. Other than that, they have similar results as far as effectiveness. And then NDOT has done some before and after studies on these vertical measures and to see how they've worked here locally. And so we've done this study of about 6 streets where we've installed them, and the graph on the left is a comparison of average speed before and after speed cushions were installed. And so before the speed cushions were installed, the average speed was 31 miles per hour, and then after it went down to 22 miles per hour. And then on the right is the 85th percentile comparison that we talked about a few minutes ago. So the before was 37 miles per hour. And then after the speed cushions were installed, it went to 25 miles per hour. So it helped us hit our target there at 25 miles per hour. So as you can see, very effective. We also incorporate and use radar feedback signs. Sometimes we'll use these on streets that can't install speed cushion, or the neighborhood doesn't want the speed cushions installed. A lot of streets where we have some steep grade, we may use these. Or if the volume is too high for the vertical devices, this is a good tool for us. They're also have proven to be effective, but what these do is show your speed as you drive towards the sign. And our before-after study showed that the 85th percentile speed reduction is 7 miles per hour. Streets where these have been installed. We've also done some pavement narrowing. Sometimes we have a really wide street, no markings, but no curb, and try to just visually narrow the road with pavement markings. Bulb outs, these are some tools we've used mostly in urban areas where an intersection is really wide, and we use paint and those white flexible delineator posts to tighten the radius of the intersection, slow turning limits, lead intersections. And then chicanes, this is something that we have done on the streets. We have to have all the right characteristics to do this, but what it is introducing some horizontal curvature on an otherwise straight street. And we've done that through alternating on-street parking from one side of the street to the other along the length of the streets. We do that with markings. This has been done on Fairfax over near Hillsborough Village. You might be seeing that. But like I said, we've got to have all the right characteristics of the street that implement something like this. And a lot of good support for those that are affected by where they can and can't. Traffic circles, these are tools and we've implemented in a few intersections where then construct a circular island in the middle of an intersection, and then it creates something similar to a roundabout, but on a much smaller scale, so you still drive counterclockwise around the intersection to make a left turn to go around the island. Again, this is the intersection needs to be sufficiently wide to still like put an island there and then allow people to be able to circulate around it. But what it does is creates that horizontal deflection as the drivers are driving through an intersection. They can slow down to navigate around that single island. So we're here to talk about 3 streets. Albion was selected in a previous round, so we're kind of combining these things. And so what we typically do at these meetings is show a concept that's a little bit more cartoonish. We've given some thought, visited the site, to see what we think is appropriate and would work, and put that together to show you at this meeting and get some feedback. So we've had a previous meeting with Albion. It wasn't that well attended, but we went ahead and put together a more detailed plan. Is anybody here from Albion? Great, excellent. So we'd like to go ahead and show you this. This is the detailed plan we put together. But again, this is a meeting to get feedback and put it on the plan so we can make some adjustments if needed. But we've gone out, done our field work, measurements, and installed to identify where these can be installed. So this is our cover page on the plan set. This is the plan that goes to the contractor to get installed. So we do this usually after the first meeting. And I'm going to zoom in to each of these 3 sections to show you. But this is our overview map. And what we've recommended are sets of speed cushions along the whole length of the street from Clare to 28th Avenue. And what it ends up being is 6 different sets of speed cushions. And we factor in where those always stops are on the street. So there's already always stops at 35th, at Clare, 35th, and 33rd. And then from there, we work with our spacing on where we can put the cushions. So this is working from west. We'll go west to east. So we've got our first set of cushions here. This is Clare, and this is 35th. So we've got a set pretty much midway in that block. And then as we continue working towards the east, so on the left side of your screen is 34th. So we have a set just east of 34th. And then 33rd again has the always stop. So we've got another set here on the east side of 32nd. And the street widens out here a little bit. So this would be a set of 4 across. And the next set also 4 across, and it's just on the other side of 31st Avenue. And again, all these have the warning signs associated with them. This is our last sheet, so it's between 30th. So between 30th and 29th, we have a set, and another set between 28th and 29th and 28th. And these again, these are set. I'm going to show you how these all lay in the road. But on the west side, those were narrower street, and so we could fit those as 3 across. They would have the center line striping in the middle one, and the way that tires work, you kind of put 1 tire cushion as you travel over that. And then on the east side, it's a little wider, and so you can put 1 tire on each of these as well. And we want to put them as far wide on the street to keep drivers from going around them. Because we know that they will do that if we don't stretch them across the whole width of the street. In the case where we have bike lanes, sometimes we'll use the flexible delineator post instead of another cushion so that the cyclist isn't affected there. But that is our concept or design for Albion Street. Are there any questions before I move on to the other streets? Yes.
We live just north of Albion on 32nd, and we noticed that from turning, going straight from 32nd, crossing Albion, there's a lot of blind spot where we're going when we're leaving. There's not a stop. There's not an always stop there. There's just a two-way.
Okay.
So I was wondering if there could be an always stop there because there's limited visibility certain kind of level.
Sure, that's a great question. We don't, through this program, use always stops because those are reserved for intersections that need it for the control of the traffic volume, or in some instances, visibility issues, but those may be correctable through some trimming or something like that. That would be a great thing to put into the hub.
Okay.
And there could be a study of that to see if there's something to be done about the visibility. The other thing about the cushions is that you said on 32nd seat, those are going to help slow people down.
Yeah.
So they'll be able to kind of avoid where you see them.
Or there could be a cushion between 33rd and 32nd to limit that speed, even though there wouldn't be a stop there, for instance.
I'm pretty sure this is where the, is the little hill there here? I think that's why we not been able to get there. Yes.
Is 20 miles an hour the speed you can give the speed cushion at?
Yes.
That's
the
still
advisory
okay.
speed. The speed limit is still posted at 25.
And I 35th, on the 35th and Albion,
Mm-hmm.
and take that a lot. Do these stop people from going through stop signs?
Probably not directly, but what we hope is that they are paying more attention. They've just gone over a speed cushion or one is coming up and they're seeing it, so they're going slow.
Because that's become a huge problem there. In the last year, people just not even slowing down, just driving through, even if they see another car coming through. Very dangerous.
Circle. Yes. I mean, that could be something.
Big enough for a circle?
No.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't think so. It's pretty.
So I will say there's some, my neighborhood, we just got some circles, kind of some temporary testers. Yeah, and it's, because there's an intersection where we've had a number of deaths, in my neighborhood. And so the circles have been really working. And so, I mean, I don't live in a big old street. I mean, I live in a neighborhood with houses just like everybody else. But the streets aren't wide. It's more inland from like a main collector or street or, so it's inland a little bit more than what Albion would be. But there may be, I don't know, I don't want to step on, I don't know the complete budget, but that may be something we can look at because those deaths happen at a stop sign.
Yeah, it's
so-
a big problem.
Stop signs don't work unless people use them. But if there's a structure in the middle of the roadway, people tend to pay a little bit of attention. I mean, they still hit them, so, but they tend to pay a little bit.
Well, something to think about.
The other thing I think people are going to react to the most is probably speed cushions that are closer to 28, because there's 4
Across the
last
list, yes.
street. That's going to drop them nuts, because you already have to stop when you get to the bottom of 28 because there's traffic right there.
Mm-hmm.
Just seems like a little bit of overkill on that stretch.
Gotcha.
Anybody else still have them? No.
I'll say the point is to get people to drive the right speed from the get-go.
Right.
But not allow them ever the chance to like really speed up. But I mean,
Yeah, that's not that long a stretch from
the speed.
this stop sign to 28.
Mhm.
I mean, like, one or two, but you've got four in there.
Well,
One set of four
one set.
across the width of the street.
Yeah, so saying from here to there.
Yeah, it just narrow, cut that down to maybe two instead of three.
So one of the things.
Because you got a full stop at 28.
Gotcha. Yeah,
But they're expecting the other way.
yeah, right, they're coming up the hill as well. Or
That's true.
But, you know, they're entering the neighborhood.
Still, I
And
mean,
hopefully this changes folks' patterns too. Luckily, we've had a lot of these meetings in our district, or not luckily, but and so many things that I've heard, some of the goals with traffic calming is to change patterns of people that are kind of cutting through the neighborhood, that aren't coming to the neighborhood, but cutting through the neighborhood. And if they're cutting through the neighborhood, generally they're trying to get through as fast as they can. And so if this may eliminate some cut through traffic,
So are you saying like if they can't speed all the way down the street?
they may go different route.
It's all together.
It'll deviate that to another.
They may, like, for instance, if we're taking Albion, so if we come up Albion right here, I'm trying to get to 40. Instead of coming down Albion and then coming around 39th, get to Clifton and then head up to 40th, I might just go all the way up here to the light at Clifton and make a right to get to 40th, that's cutting through the.
Or Walter S. Davis, you know.
Yeah, or going back to the markets or whatever, it may just, because
It
people.
may just be less traffic. on-
Maybe less. Well, because once people start to learn about it, generally, like we've seen with some of these traffic calming, is that when you add to them in, people that don't have to be there tend to try to avoid it.
they'll do anything they can to avoid it.
Depending on the circumstances of the street, if you see a certain level of deviation of traffic. It absolutely depends on like the next levels of the circumstances, but
It depends on, you know, if there's an alternate route, you know.
there are certainly cases where we are seeing a percentage of people that just don't drive it anymore. Because they took it.
And you had a question back here?
I did, but I think it was addressed in the first thing in politics.
Oh, no. Just glad you're here.
But it did. I think that it was just addressed in that in an earlier iteration of the Albion in particular, there were like 4 or 5 cushions. Everybody back. Cushions between 28 and 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And I just needed some more clarification on why that number.
We typically try to achieve about 400 to 500 foot spacing between each set of cushions. Sometimes that's a little less, sometimes it's a little more because we have things like driveways and street intersections to look at. But that's kind of our goal, usually, so that we get that consistent speed. So the driver sees the next set as they go over one set, and so there's no need to like pick back speed up to make up the time that they lost in slowing down to drive that. So they know too that's consistent speed. So that's kind of the reason why you see that spacing here.
It just seems like a lot of down end of one section.
Well, and it does at this end, because down here, we're factoring in.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, because we want people to stop at the stop sign. Because that's gonna kill somebody if they keep doing what they've been doing.
But I think we could look at whether or not, you know, there's a circle that we can put in there with this plan.
Is that similar to the circles they have both in the nation?
So they're narrow, it's just I mean, I'm a fan of them, I mean,
They have a lot of positive effects. They have some challenges with the circles, of course, but.
Aren't there some Cockrell,
Yeah,
area.
14th, it's on 14th, it goes from Elizabeth Park up to,
And people can't drive over those, can they?
No, they're,
or they can.
well, it depends on the type. It depends on the type. We've installed a couple it's still something we're experimenting with. Like there's a set of 3 that is, right near, in between Rosa Parks, State on the other side. And those are like signs and planters, like it's a physical object. But then there's other ones like the ones we showed on the screen where are basically experimenting with like rubber curb stops that you would see.
But
like,
you
in
would
parking
probably
lots.
wouldn't drive through that because you did that.
Yeah, I mean, you would certainly notice if it went over it. Like, those curb stops are substantial as well. So you're not just gonna be able to.
Yeah, it'd be like going over a speed cushion.
The kind of the intent for doing the lower profile ones are places where we have truck traffic that need to make the turn, but need to like kind of bring their back wheels over it. Things that are like somewhat mountable by the large, traffic, trailer trucks and things like that.
That would just be 35th and Albion.
Some of your bigger.
Potentially.
So then we could look at,
35th coming from CSU or 35th coming from the church? 35th where?
Well,
he's talking about 35th and,
In Albion?
and Albion.
Yeah.
With
What's
churches,
that, Mount
yeah.
Olive?
Yeah.
The church?
Yeah.
this intersection, so.
So I would assume a roundabout is for traffic to, you got your Albion traffic coming this way, you got your 35th traffic coming this way, coming off Geneva Circle this way, right? And the problem is that they're ignoring the stop signs.
Yeah.
30th spot.
Yeah, it's stop sign just means slow down if you feel like it.
West,
Because this is,
But if you don't,
the
just drive.
parking lot is gated, right?
Where?
The parking.
The parking lot
That was
is CSU, it's gated.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So
you can see if you're on Albion and you're like driving,
Yeah.
why am I gonna stop? Yeah, I mean,
Because
I'm
there's
gonna
a
stop
sign
right
there.
stop sign there, but the bad behavior drivers, they be.
Well, it didn't used to be that way, it has gone.
Right, so let's,
When you consider, which I'm sorry, I didn't know about the other meetings. We talked about, did we talk about TSU's traffic being specific and particular? Because when the school is out, it's that way.
right,
But then you got your Hadley Park traffic, which is a totally different thing.
Yeah, that's totally,
I disagree.
Which part?
Mark, when school is out, I live in 3503. And I can just sit there any day of the week. I don't.
We get,
They don't
we get a lot of kids traffic on there as well, when it comes out, it's.
When it stop?
School's out, they're pushing it around. Not everybody lives on campus.
That's true.
And some of those come through and they,
Because I know the Hadley Park traffic is a specific group of people too, and they come at night and on the weekends.
And I think that those speed bumps will keep them
I
away
would
from,
think
you
that
know.
might happen. Except if you were living on that, remember when they used to ride a circle around the park?
oh yeah,
Just absolutely no reason whatsoever.
that's,
They'll have to, the kids can't do movies over speed bumps.
Let's see what happens.
all right, well, let's move on to 33rd and 32nd, and we can always go back,
I'll have a
yes.
question about that, so sorry. So at Albion and 32nd, because we cross that pretty frequently,
Yes,
is that big enough for a traffic circle as well?
I'm not sure, it might be, because,
There could be some good variation between a stop sign and a traffic, so not having like 2 stop signs in a row if we got,
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Because I see like that visibility issue is really bad there.
that's good, that's
So-
great feedback, we could look at that. These are both, fairly wide streets, so, and that's what we're looking for in order to, so that, it does sometimes affect parking close to the intersection, which we don't want cars to necessarily park too close to the intersection anyway, because that presents that visibility issue. So, it is something we could look at. Did you have a question before we move on?
Put traffic circle right there.
We would probably, take that one out if we had the, there.
And for traffic circles where there are existing stop signs, the stop sign will stay as well. They wouldn't replace the stop signs.
So on 32nd, which is not an always stop, the traffic on Albion would still be free flowing, but they would have to slow down to get around the circle. And then this traffic on 32nd would still have a stop sign. And so they would stop, still yield to any Albion traffic.
And people will also use those incorrectly. So,
Yes.
I mean, so unfortunately, none of this is kind of foolproof. You're still gonna have people not completely going all the way around. However, one thing I have noticed at some of these locations where we put something in recently, there's some in Cooper's district, just south of us. There's some, of course, in Nations, right here, just west of us. Generally, either I'm walking or kind of passing in another space when I see it using correctly. But when it's enough traffic there, people will tend to start to pay attention. And they'll go, instead of kind of cutting, they'll go all the way around. And you'll see it, but just that if these are installed, just know that you're still gonna be pretty mad about some traffic. Just some behavior.
I actually saw someone into one of the circles and rather than go.
Left in front, yep.
Almost ran into each other.
It does happen at, all right, well, let's talk about, 32nd and 33rd. These are, like I said, in our initial concepts, we just kind of make a little sort of a cartoon concept to show you what we're thinking, get your feedback on if we're in the right, going in the right direction, and then we do a little bit more detailed plan. But what we're showing is something we think we can, could incorporate into a design, and that is still using the speed cushions. We have to be very careful about where they can go on these two streets because of the hills more in the middle of of these blocks, and just strategically placing these as such. So the spacing is further than we typically want for speed cushions, but we have to look for where it's more level to put those. But so on 33rd, the bridge north is to the right of the screen. So Albion is here on the right, and then Clifton is here on the left. And then we also have some always stops on these two streets that we're showing. So we take that into consideration as we're laying out the traffic calming devices. But this grade, 33rd, between Clifton and, is it that? Batavia, thank you. Batavia is pretty steep going down towards Clifton, so we could put a radar feedback sign there to like tell drivers they are going too fast, when they are going too fast. And then in the other direction, we could put a speed cushion here, kind of close to always stop, and just a little to the north, and then another radar feedback sign going towards Albion, down the hill on that side of 33rd. And then as it flattens out a little bit closer to Albion, there's another speed cushion there, I think.
No chance for a circle and flare or anything.
Claire's is pretty narrow. Claire's really narrow. So it doesn't afford us that extra width there.
What about another creation?
I don't think we can, we could get it on that section, because of the hill.
Can you move the one that's the speed cushions that's closest to Albion a little bit farther up? Because what I'm thinking, looking at that, if someone's gonna hit the stop sign, possibly stop, possibly not, slow down for that cushion with speed to the next one.
Yeah.
And the numbers you threw up showed that we have 1,309 people driving on that block of street considering where we live. There's not enough houses that we want traffic, and 15% are going over 37 miles per hour. That's 15% of roughly 200 cars that are speeding up the street, and they're mad.
Yeah, we think this will help for sure. And yes,
Her.
you've got some volume that's going to and from TSU, I'm sure, that's using 33rd. And yeah, it looks far and yeah,
We have a lot of commercial vehicles specifically that use that street, and because they are heavier in weight, they tend to haul on it.
What kind of size?
Yeah,
Anywhere from like box trucks to people who have the really large pickup trucks for their hauling trailers to actual like big Manajana, like serious
Semis.
vehicles.
Those sort of things shouldn't be, a lot of that should.
illegal.
Well,
Well, but potentially be diverted with this sort of implementation. I mean, they don't love going over with the really big stuff, they don't like going over the cushions. And I also say it's worth saying, sorry to interrupt. You had said, the presentation before, it said for cushions specifically, we're roughly seeing about an average reduction of 6 to 7 miles per hour. And I know that for radar feedback signs, a lot of people first think, we know most of those. We do, I believe, have data that shows that we don't get 6 or 7, but we do get 3 to 4 mile per hour reductions. They do still work, not to the same extent, but especially in conjunction with the effect needed here.
yeah.
And I
It's
found
sort of like free arguing this street.
I just can see some of the people with their supercharged Dodges are they're gonna hear that supercharger line. When they see they hit 70, they're just gonna think
Yeah, I mean,
they got the high score.
part of it also is the combined effect of all of this. Of all 3 of these streets getting, I mean, if they're using 33rd, there's a good chance they're using Albion. If Albion has 4,000 daily traffic, so there's a good chance that both those being installed or all 3 of them being installed at the same time would certainly make everyone that's wanting joyrides can probably stay out of the neighborhood.
Right, it's not gonna be really any.
Right.
So great point, Matt. Yeah, so we do think, these combinations, it's not the ideal spacing, we do have the vertical curvature to deal with, but we think it's gonna help. And
How many corrections on 33rd altogether?
33rd, 2 sets. So that's really between, Batavia and Albion.
Because it's just so steep.
Right, because it's so steep. And then we couldn't get one between here because the steepness between Batavia and Clifton. So 2 sets, and then a radar feedback sign in each direction. And then on 32nd, 3 sets. I think we have enough, level on this, section between Clifton and Batavia to put a cushion in the middle and then another 2 here. So similar treatment. This is a shorter street. And you can push this one up a little bit. And to answer your question from earlier, I think we put this as close as we can up the hill.
I think that's really gonna be helpful too, because if you think about it, how much of that traffic that we get when people are really speeding or leaving that 33rd from in front of TSU, it's like it's run from the other side of the stop sign all the way across. That's gonna make that a lot less fun. They immediately get on.
So, yes, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so we live on 32nd, more towards the right of like the traffic calming program, but not very far down. And it's really flat there. So I just didn't know, like, even if because there's only 3 being able to be on the street, if it could be extended there, because I'll be standing outside like on the sidewalk and the car will like literally almost come towards me. And or even I try to walk to the park and it's not stop. They're not looking at the stops.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we're right there.
Yeah, we almost got right up and walking here. So
Yeah, because they just don't yield, like even if I make eye contact and like do the nod and everything, like they're still rolling as I'm like entering the street. And I also like am blind in one eye, so I'm really aware of that. Or if I'm getting out of my car, like they're just lining.
crossing streets is really the process. We get where they look like.
Yeah, I'm just like very aware of it.
Typically, we keep the project within the limits that were applied for. And certainly encourage you to apply for your side of the street as well. But let's talk after.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Just because you're like, oh, it's so hilly, I'm like, well, maybe that it could help that other side of the street that can only have 3.
Yes.
If you could just, if we could look at this, the extension of those 2 streets, instead of tissue, like where the parking and the dorms are. Is that I think the security and different things kind of help that out. I guess 32nd, we could maybe throw something, at least look at a budgetary way to see just kind of what a budget would look like with maybe.
And I had a conversation with
Pushing
Scott
it
about
too more.
fees specifically already,
Okay.
so I'll run back with Scott if you want me to.
That'd be great.
So,
Yeah, we'll
yeah, because we discussed taking it
we'll
out.
get back to you.
Yeah, and
And plus, you know, we're gonna be looking at potentially the circle here.
Right.
Yeah, and it's right there, like, it's not
Yeah.
far.
Right all between now and.
Yes, I'll have it at the Albion. And just to add to that too, at 32nd and Alameda, there's like a lot of students like going back and forth between the park and the school, which is fine. But there's no like pedestrian like crosswalks or anything. So like we just moved here in April and like during the day, like when the school was in session, like there were people going back and forth and there's no pedestrian like
Yeah.
infrastructure now, so.
red flash.
Yeah,
I should have introduced Ellie earlier. She's with me over here in the corner taking notes. So, and we've got this recorded. Then we'll look into these other additional items. All right, so let's. I think we've talked a lot about the plan. We can come back to those, but let's talk. Kind of finish this out to where we are in the program flow, and then we will. Get into our next step. So essentially, like I said, this is an application program. We start with that, someone applies for traffic calming on the street. We go through all our data collection, prioritization, do that 2 times a year. So 32nd and 33rd were selected in our spring selection of this year. So we're then moving into our neighborhood meeting here, where we give you all information about the program and our initial concept plan to show you and get that feedback. And from there, we do our more detailed plan like we showed you that we've already done for Albion Street and put that together. So, and then from the design, once that's done, we move into the online ballot. And so I have some more slides that go into more details about that. But essentially, this is how NDOT ensures that this is a project that the community wants to see move forward. And so we have a voting process and allow the neighbors on the street to vote yes or no for the project. And from there, then it moves into construction. So if the project is voted, passes the votes, then NDOT moves it into construction, orders materials, and gets that installed. So we are working all the time to speed this up. Council member is probably one that's always asking us to move this faster, and we're trying to do that, or NDOT's trying to do that. So the ballot phase is about 2 months to 6-week window, and then construction can take anywhere from 8 to 10 months to get installed, and that's
10 plus.
I will say, to correct the council member just a little bit, this is an old diagram as far as I'm aware. I think the last we were seeing was 6 to 8, and I know the director wants to get it below probably 5.
So this could be.
Well, 6 to 8 months from construction, from ballot passing. So it kind of depends on
so
the
overall, yes, it could be about another year.
until
That's our goal is like from the selection to install is about a year. So you see this second neighborhood meeting if needed. Sometimes we will present a concept that really needs some more refinement. We missed the mark, the community wants something really different, or we can have a very good turnout and make sure we reach more of the community to make them aware of the project. So we might have a second meeting. So we usually leave this meeting, the first meeting, with an understanding of whether we need to have another meeting or not, or if the community is in favor of the plan that we've put together with maybe the tweaks that we discussed, then we would skip that. It just kind of slows down the process just a little bit, but yes.
I'm maybe jumping ahead, but based on what you said and based on the fact that Albion was already discussed, where are we in
Yeah.
terms of?
Albion, we're kind of here, we're having our second meeting, for Albion, and I've heard that we want to see if we could install some, the circles at 32nd, and perhaps some other enhancements on 32nd, which may or may not be part of the traffic calming program, separate, see, but, from here for Albion, I would think we would go into, we've got our plan put together. If we may need to make a tweak, we can, but I think we would go into our ballot and not hearing like a lot of pushback on the plan that we've shown.
Who gets to vote?
That's some of my next slides, so that's great. So balloting is, we send postcards. You'll get, that in the mail. It'll have a place for your unique ID code. This is how we make sure that we don't have duplicate votes, and so forth, because it's one vote per, owner, for property on the street. Then it has some information here. It has a QR code to vote on my ballot. So you can use your phone to go there. The web address is also right here, so you can type that in. And from there, you can see the plans. They'll be posted online as well. So you or your neighbors, you know, if you're not familiar with this project, first time you're seeing it, you can have an opportunity to see the plan before voting yes or no on the project. So you vote yes or no, and if 66% of the respondents vote yes, then the project is forward. Again, these
Who
are.
gets those? Who gets that information?
Property,
Here,
all the property owners involved in
the
the,
property owners on the street. So I've kind of highlighted these properties. This is using a tool that Metro government uses to send mailers, but essentially on Albion Street, it's 26 eligible properties, and it's residential properties, churches, schools, they get one vote. And it's only properties that abut the affected right of way. So just those highlighted properties, they just there along Albion, just running right through here. And then vacant properties are not eligible, so it's really just mostly residential properties. Businesses are not eligible. And then like if there's a property owner that owns like 6 properties on the street, they just get one vote. And these are mailed and sent to the property owner's address. So if the property owner is a PO box or is in Oklahoma, that's where that postcard gets mailed. But we encourage you to, you know, reach out to any renters you know, make sure they are aware of it, ask their landlords to vote in favor or vote for the project, yes or no. We really want a lot of turnout. And then, of course, if you or your neighbor, you talk to your neighbor, they didn't get their postcard, or maybe they threw it away, reach out. We want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to vote, so don't hesitate there. And then, 33rd and 32nd here are shown. 33rd, it's like about 37 eligible properties. It's all the, residential properties, churches, along the street that abut the right of way. 32nd is 51 eligible properties. Does that answer your question about?
Yeah, the fact that 26 people are gonna make a decision that affects the whole neighborhood is the concern to me. Sure, about Albion.
So some contact information. Here's my information, NDOT's traffic calming email address as well here. NDOT TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. And then we can go back. I just want to make sure I show all of our slides. This is a QR code and the web address to NDOT's traffic calming website. Lots of information on this website. It's got links to YouTube of all these meetings. So if your neighbor missed this meeting and they want to learn all about these projects, send them to this website. They can access this meeting. We get those uploaded in the next week. That's where our plans are posted, or on the tracker maps. You can track the status of your project. The results of the ballot votes get posted there. not individual votes. We just post the percent tally, at the end, of those 6 weeks. Our process manuals there, things like that. So lots of great information there. Also, we have some Engage, Nashville, pages for all 3 of these projects. So if you go to engage.nashville.gov, / traffic calming, that will take you to our Engage project pages for each of these 3 streets. And there's a place where you can put in some input about these streets specifically on the map. You can mark, here's the visibility problem. We'd like to see the traffic circle at a certain intersection or so. So that's some good input, particularly as we refine those plans for 33rd and 32nd. That's just a place to get some information. We post information about meetings there as well. So, and NDOT, Metro in general is using this whole platform to get feedback, neighborhood feedback on all sorts of projects. So not just traffic calming projects, but all capital projects, plan projects, you can find more information about what's going on in Nashville right there. Do we have any questions from the chat or online? Okay. Sure.
Hi, Billy, I see you turns my computer performance to maybe we can hear you. Or I can just ask for it.
Yeah, you may have to do that.
Billy Sanders.
Yes, I apologize. I was on 2 Zoom meetings at the same time, so I didn't see the entire presentation, but I think you said we can see it. It's been recorded and we can see it at the NDOT website. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, you're gonna have to give us a couple days to get it uploaded, but it will be at this address, TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov, and there's a section there that says meetings, I think.
And also,
Yes.
and I'll, once I receive the recording, I'll just send it to through my newsletter, so everyone can have it.
Okay.
Or you don't have to go search for it.
There you go. Perfect.
And it's my understanding you said businesses do not get to vote on this.
That's correct.
But if we have input, we can contact the Engage site, engagenashville.gov, and have our input, because there might be things we like about it and things that we don't like.
That's correct.
Need to be tweaked.
Right. That's right. And we have some specific email addresses and everything for that project as well, which you can put input through the Engage Nashville websites, and you can also email me as well.
Do landlords get to vote?
Yes, the property owners to vote. That's where the postcard gets made.
But does the landlord have to be an individual? Can it be a business if it's a landlord?
It can be a business. The postcards will go to the address that is associated with the property owner.
Yeah, the business residential delineation is about the use of the property, not necessarily who owns it, or even if you,
Oh,
like, if you have
okay.
your own business, that doesn't.
So if it's a landlord for residential use, they get to vote.
Yes, yes. It's one vote per property owner. Yeah. So if a property owner owns 4 properties on the street, they're just gonna get one postcard, one unique ID code to vote with.
Okay.
All right.
And what was the period, the voting period again, the dates for that?
We don't have those yet.
Okay.
Because we haven't sent that out. But what will happen is in a few weeks, we will send, I believe, the postcards for Albion. And then we still need to discuss what our path forward on 33rd, 32nd is. But those Albion postcards, I believe, will be going out much sooner. And it's open for a 6-week period of time. And so on the postcard, the date it closes will be on the postcard, so you'll know when you can check back and find out what this postcard. So, since we're talking about, next steps and the balloting and everything, I want to see if we can come to a resolution on what to do about 32nd and 33rd as far as, are we in favor of this plan generally speaking? And, want to move forward with doing a more detailed design, which, you know, identifies exactly how far from driveways and so forth, that the cushions would be located more specific where they are. And then from there, we could have another meeting, or we could move it along and go ahead and send, postcards out.
I think it's going to help.
Yes.
I think it's gonna make a difference. Not sure if that's exact what we want, but it seems like it will help.
I agree. I mean, I think it looks really good. I mean, we're limited by the steepness. And anything's better than.
Yeah.
What we need.
It needs something.
Okay.
You get enough cars here, on the street parking, you want some.
Right, and, yeah, we don't want to.
Cars in our street, speeding drivers.
Okay, so I'm hearing maybe we just move forward with wrapping up the design for 32nd and 33rd, and then going ahead and doing the ballot. How do you feel about that, Councilmember?
As part of the, I will say as part of the, as part of, if we're moving towards design for 32nd, 33rd, having already spoken with the NDOT project manager on our side of things about potentially increasing the limits northward. At the very least, I can't promise that we would do cushions on the northern portion, but at the very least, we will evaluate the portion for potentially radar feedback or some additional data gathering to either solve the problem now or drive a future project for the program. So if everyone else is good for like moving to design on those two streets with that caveat that we'll look northward.
I mean, if we want to, it just depends on timing. If you want to take a look, if you want to move to this plan, you want to maybe get some circles, you want to get something different that came out of the notes here, that may would need to, and I don't want to, I know we want to get to the finish line quicker, but I want the investment to be worth its while. And so, which sometimes may take some time to get to, but if we can maybe, it's up to you all. This is a community-led process, but I'll just let you throw some thoughts in. If you want to look at an additional design prior to, we could probably come back in another couple of weeks, 2, 3 weeks, I would say. Or would that be enough time?
Maybe a little longer.
Okay.
If we're gonna end up with another design and also have to send out mailers again, the meeting, it would
Maybe
we
a
need
month.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it throws it off a little bit. We know it's not coming for the end of this year. But we can kind of look at, if you want to look at a different design, I would suggest maybe doing that just to kind of have another kind of idea of what it can look like, as opposed to making a decision today. Because then that goes to the ballot, then it lets us pontificate a bit more on what else could be possible, specifically from some of the concerns I heard about. Just additional speed humps with, areas where we're gonna have stop signs, people are still gonna go fast over speed humps. I'm a fan, I've always been a fan of traffic circles, just, I've seen them work extremely well in other places. But, we can look at some. But if you guys wanna go ahead, y'all tell Amy, I just wanna put some.
All right, what do we think? We're gonna circle back and have another meeting in a couple of months, or?
When you're saying that, are you talking specifically, because I know we're doing everything together, but this is not all together on everything. I don't see any reason to double back on 32nd and 33rd.
Right. I do think this is probably the most we can apply to these two streets. And the difference would be something here, which is more of an Albion treatment, than it is a 32nd.
I do agree with your suggestion to move that first speed bump,
as far south as possible.
as far south as possible, yeah.
On 30th.
On 33rd, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll kind of cite that more physically in the field. And
Right, what does
we
that,
measure the grade and everything.
what does that do with this Albion?
Yeah, so Albion is the one that actually has a little bit more gray to it based on our conversations about a potential circle here, which Mike would, right, so this is 32nd and Albion's here, so we would, if we could get a circle in here, it sounds like that's something that community likes, which means we would remove this set of cushions, because they would be too close. But that could help with people that are having visibility issues on 32nd, slowing people down there through the intersection. And then we also talked about at 35th, even though it's an always stop, people are sounding like they're not stopping. So potentially a circle there. So those are
Albion is, I mean, it's a much heavier use than 32nd, 33rd. I mean, Albion's gonna impact everyone that lives here. That's why I wanted to kind of throw out more thought process there. And I think to Kate's point, I mean, we've been around the circle with this whole traffic calming, how we do it. And at one point, when we very first started doing traffic calming, this was before I was elected, but we would just throw it out there and do it. So we just come and install. We hear that things were bad, or we'd see a lot of accidents or a lot of other pieces of just areas that we need to act. We would act immediately without this process. And then people were starting to get upset because just overnight without notice, a lot of stuff showed up on their street that they didn't necessarily ask for. So then we moved to this style where it had to be community led to get the process started. And then we added some pieces to where there's a validating process. So it's been it's evolved a lot. Not great, it's evolved a lot. I think, and I may be speaking for NDOT, but I think there's a long evolution that's kind of being discussed at the moment.
Yeah, and definitely part of that, and to the councilor's credit, before, I think there's a lot that happened as far as getting this meeting together with combining 32nd, 33rd and Albion for the second meeting. Either way, to his credit, he had asked me previously about extending the limits for 32nd, 33rd, which was when I had that conversation with our project manager for it. So that is in progress, but certainly that's part of like the evolution that we're currently looking at is when we're brought to a location, how much further should we look out and how much more of a larger impact should we look at doing at one time? So yeah, Councilmember Tice is right. As far as Albion as well, if it's really just the two intersections that are causing a lot of heartburn, there's a world where we can avoid the month and a half of waiting for a third meeting for Albion and just us committing to looking at those intersections potentially for whatever potential, whether it's a visibility issue, it might just be we need to cut the brush back. I'm not sure what we can talk after what is causing the visibility issue.
Yeah, it's just that hill, it's just the.
Yeah, so it's an issue of crossing, there's already a crosswalk there, it might be a matter of upgrading the crosswalk. Like, there's other things that could be done separate of kind of delaying this project more, that we would commit to looking at.
Far as like the extension of, like you was asking for, like to north of Albion. Like, I don't worry about this as much as I worry about the kids that right.
They're it's a family, like the house over from us, and they have like 4 kids that are like right there, and you can just see like they're on their bike, and then there's like a car like screeching in front of them, these little babies, and it's just sad. And then they're always playing in the field too, kind of diagonal from us, so they're out and they're
That intersection on 32nd Ave gets a lot of action from TSU and just everywhere, so there's a lot of speeding both ways on Albion. Right.
I would also add to like at night as well, like we're in natural like low visibility, I mean, in water world, but there were still people walking at night.
Right. Yeah.
So we're definitely gonna be looking at those two intersections for Albion.
I've seen the 32nd and Albion intersection, it's scary. I was there, I've had a wreck here.
Mm.
Hit and run out there. But I think that the cushion are going to, will solve that problem. I can see the cushion being what they're eliminating that issue of that intersection being scary. I can see where a circle would help too, but I think the cushion would eliminate that scariness of that intersection right there.
All right, so,
Do you care to go back to show the street pictures from Albion? Yes. Really what that was asking where they are, and she was also asking concerns about people just going straight through the shops.
right, so that was something we talked about earlier, was we heard from residents here that people are not always stopping at the stop sign at 35th and Albion. They're doing it on Albion. So we do have a set of cushions between Claire and 35th on Albion. And then continuing to go east, we have one between a set between 34th and 35th on Albion. Set between 32nd and 31st, and another one, between 31st and 30th. And then two more down here between 30th and 28th. So essentially one every block.
Ms. Sages, does that answer your question? You did a big life.
Right. So what did we decide? Did we decide we're gonna have another meeting in like 2 months?
For Albion. You want a third one?
Vice President.
I don't
He's an applicant.
think that, third reading is necessary.
Okay.
Yeah, if we say if we commit to looking at those two iterations and extending.
It sounds like it's desired if we can do it, to do a couple of circles in those two intersections. So I think if we can do it, we're gonna fold it into the plan, separate from those, the 32nd, two more, but, so that's what we're gonna do. And then we will incorporate that into the plan, and it'll be the one that's posted on the plan. So we'll wait until we get that worked out for Albion, and then we'll send those postcards. So when the postcards go out for all three of these streets, and they may come at different times, but we will let council member know, we'll let the applicants know about that, so you know to be looking for them. Let your neighbors know to look for them in their mailbox, and be sure to vote. Just vote when you get it, so it doesn't get lost.
Thank you, Amy and Brandon, for having this meeting, and just remember, these 3 streets are the most important ones.
Now, the good thing is you guys are fine. I'm now bullish on like 3 other applications. So you can, it's bad. So when the applications go in, I generally know that they're going in because I've had very decent conversations, a decent amount of conversations with the applicant. And then I probably am nonstop with my calls to in and out about my streets.
And I believe that, I may be wrong, but I think this was the first meeting for the 25 streets that were just selected this spring. So you guys are ahead of the game for this selection.
Don't worry about it.
All right, well, I think I'll close up our meeting if there's anything else. Thank you for your participation.
Good to see you.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
That was bad.
What's your new neighbor?
Yeah.
Sir.
How you be?
Good to see you.
Thank you.
You guys, shop, you know?
Yes, yeah.
I'm ordered that some man.
What was that one?